So these are a sort of quasi nonfiction pieces that I write on and off. One day I might put them all together. Some have been published, some have not. And I'm just going to read a few sections from them. And each section has a title that is based from a line in a pop song. So, 1. Everybody needs love, you know this is true. Scroll through channels to pay-per-view, scroll through pay-per-view to adult, scroll through adult channels, flip past gay and click on gangbang. Maybe it would be Italian or French or something just Euro, meaning dick-focused, because here was the thing, nobody watches porn for the pussy. But to see the guy work it, that must be it. You almost click buy. After all, they'll charge the room 2513, but you weren't paying for the room. And at some point checking out, front desk would ask, to whom shall we bill gangbang slut 6, sir? And you think, at least that was better than hard rods too. Weren't men supposed to stop beating off at 17? In a car, a few months back to the church retreat, you and 2 brothers in Christ were talking about sex, man of God style. Brothers, can I tell you this? It's kind of a thorn in my side. Yeah, you sure it's that sad you have it? Group laugh. Every normal man struggles with it. And I know, and the last thing I want to sound is like some naive Christian, but you know what? I really think I was going to stop once I got married. Group laugh. Brethren, at least I think about my wife when I do it. I don't think about my wife. Oh. Who? It's just a struggle. I'd never do something like that. You know me, but it's just that once somebody's breasts are fully grown, there's nowhere left for them to go. I mean, grow. Can you imagine if we weren't married? All this burning in passion. Thank God you're single. You look at the 2 of them. One deep in the middle of a bulging family and fucking his wife to a full womb every year, yet still stunned that he's the loneliest man on the planet. The other wishing he could turn his God-fearing wife into a slut who would suck his dick like she meant it, instead of looking at it thinking, this too shall pass. Both making the mistake of thinking the opposite of loneliness was company. You look at them looking at you, and you think they're thinking at least they dodged the bullet that is called your life. 35 and no wife, no prospects, and you have one of the Lord, which is great, but still. Masturbation isn't a sin if you think about your wife, brethren, future lonely man says. Later that same week, he will not tell you about the first and second woman he cheated with, but the third and fourth, he will tell you, along with news of a 5th baby. Funny how God's punishment for being a dog is usually to give you girls as children, but you have nothing but boys, I say. The Sunday following a road trip with the fuck-struck brothers in Christ, Pastor came back from Oklahoma with Bruce, a tall, blue-eyed idea of a tall, blue-eyed boy. Hey, y'all, he said, sidestepped the ear and went straight for the heart. After Wednesday night church, you're in the parking lot watching good Christians head to the cars as they wave at the white boy. He asked about reggae. I have to tell you, I'm more of a rock guy, you say. You and me both. I'm a Christian, but I'm going to have them play November Rain at my wedding. Dude, try all you want. You're not a bigger Guns N' Roses fan than me. I want him to play My Michelle at my wedding. I don't care if my wife's name is Claudia. Sweet Lord, you rock, he says. Skipped the ears and went straight to the heart. 1 week later, he says, I feel like I can tell you anything. He doesn't know what he's doing here. Pastor saw him preach and thought a man like him so on fire for Jesus would ignite young people. But here he was in the middle of Kingston with no fire to start. Sometimes you just want to be, you know, right? I know. 2 weeks in, you call him your favorite redneck because he does that Kennedy thing every time you do it in public. Will the redneck please stop loitering and go to the car waiting for him, you say over the PA. And 300 people not pretend not to be shocked while one handsome white boy gets 2 shades redder with each guffaw. Every time you're with him, you forget you're in Kingston, and he forgets he has nothing to do. You should come to Oklahoma, he says, and you wonder if he means that in the global sense. In October, he heads back to Oklahoma. The night before you exchange bro hugs, clasp hands the barriers between 2 bodies. Well, if you're ever in Oklahoma, he says, sure, you say. 1 week after he returns, he marries some girl that he only knew a few months before, gets her pregnant weeks after that, and never speaks to you again. 2, I like to think they like us, but I don't think they like us. Watch yourself, young boy. Watch yourself, because you're a marked man and 36 men are watching you. Not men, but boys. Boys in the classroom of Fort Form. Boys in the stink of Drakkar Noir cologne. Boys trying to b-boy up school uniforms by opening 3 shirt buttons while letting the pants slump and crumble on top of Reebok pumps. Boys swaggering to the bus stops, walking semi-crab style to LL Cool J. Boys spitting on the pavement and chatting new lingo, imported from New York. Yo, that was stupid fresh. Boys finally out of the purgatory of chin and pubic hair baldness. Boys in school with boys making a performance of how much they know pussy. Before me fuck her, she piss shh, but don't me fuck her, she piss a different way, says a boy who clearly has no idea how women work. Who stepped into the classroom crotch first because he earned it. Because he had sex with a girl from Prairie High School and can talk about it. 36 boys are watching you. Boys who go to class with just boys have to prove it all day. Meanwhile, you've been listening to Prince too long. 1984 was 2 years ago, and everybody's a b-boy now. Listening to Prince makes you an art faggot. I mean, Kiss is cool, but why such a faggot video? At school prayers, the principal mentions a boy with no name, expelled because he was caught in the midst of inappropriate activity. It takes a week for everybody to notice one boy missing, an actor, a comedian. You know what they say about boys with talents. Maybe you should get a C for your next art assignment, screw up on purpose, and get boys to like you. Boys shouldn't act like girls, but to be with boys, you must do what girls do. Set your brain on dim so that the boys will call you over for the lunchtime stoop. At the gate with the cha-cha boys, on the steps with the brainy boys, popping and locking with the b-boys, at the fence of the girls' school with the fuck boys, outside the principal office with the white boys. Do it now. Put your brain on dim and use that spillover energy to watch yourself. Look at you now asking that kid to borrow his ruler. You stick your hand out barely 4 seconds before the wrist droops, the hand sags, lips with limp wrister. You swing your wrist back straight, but not before the boy 2 class rows down hisses and flicks his own wrist to match yours, you faggot. Keep your hands to the side next time. If you must extend your hand, keep every joint straight and let nothing go 90 degrees. Boys are watching. And your legs are too close together. Boys sit as if their thighs are made of the backside of magnets. Why you sit so narrow? You have a pussy to protect? But boys who sit wide have crotches on display. Don't look. Stand up, then sit down with your legs wide apart. Stand up, then sit down with your legs wider. Stand up, then sit down until your tendons scream. Don't sit up straight. Hang off to one side and let your head rest on the chair. Get Reeboks or Nikes and don't come in here in leather shoes again. At least you like Bon Jovi, so there's one thing scary about you. I should tell you how long ago this was. When you walk, swing your arms wider. Keep them swinging to your sides, make you look like you're gliding, and only boys who we call floating faggots glide. Did your hips just sway? Don't laugh, you laugh like a girl, and don't respond when they tease. In fact, just don't say anything. Never, and this is important, never ever volunteer to answer any question asked by a teacher that demands more than one word. Kneel like a man, sit like a man, 1 foot must be on the ground at all times. When cool boys ask you to do their homework, do it. When they call you faggot in public, laugh like the butt of the joke is walking away from both of you. When they ask you to do their homework 2 days later, do it again. Get a cool boy haircut. Practice lowering your voice in the mirror. Study dancehall and Fame FM and use 1 or 2 words of slang in at least 1.5 sentences a day. In lieu of actual girls, make it be known that you have a growing collection of porn. Stop drawing art, that's for faggots, and draw breasts, busts, lips, and pussies with women attached. Did you just cross your legs at the knee? Boys don't cross legs. Play football, but be the goalkeeper since you can't dribble or kick. Consider joining the Interschools Christian Fellowship since nobody has the balls to mess with a god boy. When one of the boys say, him faggy but him brainy, accept this as good as a compliment as you're ever going to get. Watch as cool boys discuss you with the art teacher who says you're just fine, but she's the art teacher. One of the boys, the teaser whose homework you sometimes do, says, you know, you're cool, you're really cool, it's just. He never finishes a sentence, and you never ask him to, but you live in the ellipsis for 7 months, wishing more than anything that he told you what was so wrong so you could fix it. You want to fix it more than anything, but there are many ways to fix something, and later, when you walk all the way down to downtown to get the bus you keep walking, past roads, shops, signs, warnings, sea-salted docks and gulls, until your shoes are 2 inches off the pier with the ship blocking your view of the sea. A man says, only yesterday some boy fall off and land between the dock and the ship and he couldn't swim out. You look down the narrow space between the dock and the ship and realize it could suck you up so quickly, nobody would know where you're gone. What the fuck you doing, boy? You forget that you never walk downtown alone, that even rejects have friends, with little in common other than being stomped by the same foot. You can get through a hate season when you're 7 strong, but even in a boys' school, boys find boys who may not share girlfriend names but X-Men comics. Not parties but early afternoon matinees, not stolen beer but traded Dungeons and Dragons cards, not fucking tips but paintbrushes, inks and paper, and all of Live Aid on VHS. The antisocial cusser, the art fag, the poor boy, the fag, the nerd, the fat boy, the new kid who will realize in one summer that he can do better than us. Not doing nothing, I'm just watching the sea. That's what you're doing? Yeah. I'm just watching the sea. Thank you.
Give it up for our drama instructor, Kathryn Grant.
Before I get too scared. This is from a play I wrote, or I'm writing actually, of the same name, Aaliyah, and the character is Aaliyah. And she begins the play, and then this is kind of interspersed throughout the play, but I'm going to read it as a monologue just for the sake of simplicity. I've always been interested in the spiritual side of life. I don't like to say that I'm a quote-unquote spiritual person because that sounds so lofty and self-important, but I am someone who has been driven to ask questions and seek answers about the nature of God and existence. I realize I'm not the first person to do that, but it seemed to me, at least when I was growing up, that the people that I was around took more for granted. I don't know. I was born a Jew, and on some level, I know that Judaism has a lot to offer, but it just it never took with me. I guess it was because all the practices were all tied up for me with my family and childhood, and a lot of that was not so nice. So at any rate, I spent some time getting into looking for a spiritual practice that I could live with. I was into Zen Buddhism for a while. I liked the sitting meditation and the chanting, but while it made me feel more peaceful, it never seemed to make its way into my life in a more practical way. I was living in Fishtown, floating around doing adjunct work in Philadelphia Community College, waitressing, can you imagine, trying to get into publishing but not making any real inroads. And the man I was living with at the time was drinking heavily, and all the sitting and the chanting didn't seem to really, help me get things going. So I tried Theosophy and Shintoism and other forms of Buddhism, and finally, I guess it was about 4 years ago, I ended up going to this church that really seemed to help. A friend of mine was going to this church called the Church of the Divine Principle, and they held services in an old theater, and it sounded a little hokey to me, but she raved about it, and tell you the truth, she had made some radical changes in her life since she started going, including losing 30 pounds and kicking a heavy pot habit, so I figure why not give it a try? I liked it. The first thing I noticed was that it seemed to be one of the few public spaces I'd ever been in that was really integrated. To see people of all hue coming together in a spirit of kinship was kind of inspirational in of itself. The service started. Musicians started to file in, and I realized there was a little combo. And I said, oh no, I'm not someone that really believes in drums in a place of worship. But then when this singer with this frosted hair and the ducktail started singing the theme from An Officer and a Gentleman, I leaned over to my friend and I said, that's it, I'm out of here. I mean, I know that religion relies on a leap of faith, but I never thought you should have to check your taste at the door. But she told me that if I lasted through the service, she'd buy me lunch. So I stayed, and actually by the end of the song, I felt this lump growing in the back of my throat, and I thought, God, this is strange. And then there was 2 speakers who spoke after the singer, and then there was a kind of a group song. And when this little elderly black lady sitting there with her teenage daughter held out her hand, I took it and we sang together. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father. Well, by the end of the song, I lost it. And then the little old lady in her lovely little pink hat said, "Come here, sweetheart." And she held me until I stopped crying. So then, this church became a regular practice with me. Not only did I attend services, I became a volunteer. I got my life moving in a pretty fast pace. The tenets of this church became my true north. The most significant thing for me was the idea that all creation was a manifestation of a divine principle, that the separation of people into places and things into categories like good and bad, beautiful and ugly, black and white was a lie. And the more we realized our oneness with all creation, the more we could tap into this incredible energy of the universe. I know it sounds pretty esoteric, but it worked for me. I had been carrying around a lot of anger at my dad, my boyfriend, my first grade teacher, you name it. And in practicing this principle, I let go a lot of that. And doing so, I released up all this pent-up energy, and I started taking some chances. I began a small publishing company specializing in high-quality books. The company did so well, I gave up my waitressing, I dumped the boyfriend, moved into a better apartment on Rittenhouse Square, and was finally feeling like I was carving out a life for myself. About a year ago, when I was coming home from work, a man followed me into my apartment. I was watching the news, and I realized I wasn't alone. "Someone is in here," I said, and I waited. When I said those words, I stood there, not calm, but resolute. Come what may, I remember feeling. Let me see your face. Come what may. When he came out of the closet, we looked at each other for a long time. He was carrying a cardboard cutter, and he held it up like a candle. I remember looking into his eyes, searching, convinced that if I could just conquer my fear and see God's perfect child in him, somehow we could get through it together. I said to him, "You don't have to do this." This made him angry. He kicked me and he said, "Don't tell me what to do. You should have locked your door, you stupid shit." He hit me on the head with a lamp, and then I must have blacked out. When I came to, he was ransacking the apartment. I had spent so much time angry at so much in my life. I knew he was going to kill me, and I didn't want to die that way. So I said to him, "Listen, I know I'm going to die. I know you're going to kill me, I know that. And I want you to know that I forgive you. You are God's beloved." He looked at me for a minute like I was a child, like I needed to be schooled. And he said, "There is no God." And then he said, "But if there was, I would be that fuck's nightmare." At that moment, it came to me that all the things that I had learned in that church, were lies. That evil was absolute, that sometimes God honors evil, that God gives it space to breathe and grow. Maybe he gets bored, or maybe he just needs to feel his power, or maybe he's just numb. And I wanted to die more than ever. I did. But I didn't die. He didn't kill me. He left quietly, not taking a thing. And I'm here. I'm here. Thank you.
Welcome the chair of the English department, Wendy Galgan.
So I'm going to share a couple of poems with you today, a few poems. The first one is my newest one. It was written for my husband on our 17th anniversary, and it's titled Anniversary Villanelle. Each day will end the way that it begins. Your hand on my hip, my cheek to your chest. I cannot sleep unless we're skin to skin. Shadows fill the corners as the world spins, while sunlight shades to twilight in the west. And our day ends the way that it began. We leave behind the places we have been and trade the world's indifference for rest in one another's arms, now skin to skin. Gentle starglow fills your shining eyes and turns the endless night-black world to warmest gold. Now day ends and loving night begins. Our soft-voiced murmurs fade to whispers when we move from words to touch, our bodies pressed together closely, moving skin on skin. We doze, then wake, then sated sleep again. Our fingers entwined, your head on my breast. Today will end the way that it began, for I can't sleep unless we're skin to skin. And the next one is titled Nondum Cognita. Means, Jerry, help me out. Beyond this we don't know, or unknown, right? So Nondum Cognita. Moonlight frosts the lawn, silvers the oak leaves, moves from your hip to your shoulder to your cheek as I doze and wake, doze and wake. The peepers have been calling for hours, long enough for their song to become as much a part of the night's silence as the potting shed, the rose bush, the picnic table you painted last week. When the moon passes behind a neighbor's tree line, I step out on the upstairs deck. The air is moist with soon-to-be dew. 10 feet below, the frogs still sing. We are passing through the Pleiades. First one, then three, then half a dozen silver arcs appear against the sky. Hands against the railing, I watch until it seems I can feel the earth's slow turning, until I can see nothing but blue and silver stars picked out against the ebony quilt of the night. Hands and feet chilled by weather-silvered wood, I go back inside to lie beneath these sheets, beneath our roof, and listen to you breathe. And this is a last love poem that I'll read again from my husband, Creation. There are no stars visible from here, just crumbling cornices and pointed brickwork and the gray parchment of the midnight sky. Too much light escapes this city, too many street lamps and turn signals, too many bulbs left burning to scatter their illumination through steel and glass and throw a corona between the sky and us. Let me build a universe here in this room. Let every joyous tear be a newborn star. Let every whisper be a solar breeze. Let every instance of skin on skin leave behind the fire and heat of a comet's tail. Turn away from the window, away from the moon's distant light. Trade its cold caress for the silver strands of my hair falling through your fingers, for this pale landscape warm and soft to your touch. Let dawn come when we wish. Let our well-banked fires wake once again. Let the darkness lift slowly. Watch our morning star appear in my eyes. This next poem is dedicated to my friend Steve Bogart. He told the story from which the poem comes. 1968. Penn Station, 6 a.m. Duffel bag in hand, the boy waits, a volunteer among conscripts. These young ones offer gruff introductions, firm handshakes all around, unaware that each mimics his father's tone, smile, stance. The news from California has begun to filter east. A rumor when they left their homes, garbled facts now gleaned from transistor radios passed along the way. Two men, dark suits, felt hats, stride past the knot of boys on the platform. Words leap like dolphins from their wake. Unbelievable. Bobby, their poor mother. The boys, silent now as birds at a cat's passing, lean toward the men, then stiffen, shuffling, red-faced at the command to board. New York to Washington, the boys begin to settle in. Loud chatter fades to quiet conversation. Past Washington, nothing but backyards, clotheslines, piles of trash spilling down embankments, rickety porches and rusted fire escapes, frame-broken windows and boarded-up doors. Now the train stops in each small town. As the boy watches, silent in his window seat, a flag-draped box is unloaded at the first stop, and the next, and the next. Each time an officer, his hand laid on the box's lid, accompanies it to the platform. 3, 5, 6 stops later, a box for each stop. And with each mile, the boy gets closer to rice paddies and rotor wash, further and further from his mother's voice, his father's smile. And this poem is titled Prayer for My Sister. The expected phone call with unexpected news drives me from the office. I thought to stop at the chapel, to call upon the trappings of a long-discarded faith, but instead pass by the small wooden doors without pausing. Outside, I walk until I reach the iron railing which separates me from the harbor. I sit on a wooden bench hard by that railing, look through the bars toward the sea. An odd fog lies low at the horizon, hovers between open water and me. Mist white in places, it shreds as it nears the harbor's shelter, while its body roils around the islands, billows about the statue's feet. A cool day in a warm March sends a breeze along the promenade, but the water beneath me doesn't move, except where it's disturbed by a lone cormorant bobbing for its dinner. To my right, the sharp-edged city gleams in sunlight. Not a trace of sea mist moves across its face. Helicopters dip like dragonflies toward the river, then swoop around, dragging their noses to pass behind the skyline. The orange ferry looks small in its berth, seems to suddenly expand, grow broad and cumbersome as it passes into the sea lane between city and island. A smart white cutter moves past the pier below, its wake rocking the cormorant closer to shore. Now the ferry turns to starboard and nearing the island seems small again and sturdy against the trees. Farther out, at the fog's edge, a boat I can't recognize appears. She rides low in the water. A graceful curve arches over her bow. The mist's tattered edges brush against her as she comes around and points her nose straight out toward the Atlantic. She's too far away for me to see more than a silhouette, a suggestion of a boat. And the fog is drawing her in, and she's out of sight before I can identify her, before I've learned her name. Got 2 more. The first one takes its title from Samuel R. Delaney's book, The Fall of the Towers. And the line from that book is, that is the title of the poem, is, "You are trapped in that bright moment where you learned your doom." This morning, 6 fighter planes flew over our barn, following the roofline straight across the island and on to Brunswick Naval Air Station. Long before they appeared, low, loud, swift against high azure, their rush and rumble announced them. I stopped, standing between my husband and my father, and held my hands to my eyes, searching the skies for whatever made the air around me and the earth beneath me thrum. And for a moment, we were no longer nearly 3 years and nearly 400 miles away from that high blue September morning. So I began with a villanelle. I'm going to end with a villanelle. This was actually published in the collection Villanelles, edited by our own Annie Finch. Thank you, Annie, and Marie Elizabeth Molly. It's entitled Burning Angels, March 25th, 1911. Women stand in windows, flames at their feet. Dark smoke builds to cover Washington Place. It's raining children on Green Street. The wooden ladders cannot bridge the great distance between the sidewalk and splintered casements. Women stand on ledges, flames at their feet. Hair streaming, coat smoking, a girl leaps, drops like a bolt of cloth with a soot-stained face. It's raining children. On Green Street, men curse as women jump from killing heights, and death-crazed horses fight their traces. Girls stand on ledges, flames at their feet. Rusted metal buckles, snaps. Firemen weep as two flame-winged angels fall in a smoky embrace. It's raining. Children on Green Street gaze at those impaled on iron fence spikes, at 8 rows of bodies that fill sidewalks' empty space. Girls stand in windows, flames at their feet. It's raining children on Green Street. Thank you.
This is Mitch Levenberg. He's on the English department faculty here at St. Francis College. Give him a round of applause, Mitch.
I always get a lot of ideas sitting in diners. Diners are, I find diners more than any other place has the best overheard conversation. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas from. To sit in a cafe with computers, people are, or any kind of cafe, people are kind of at their computers, even if they're at the same table, and they're kind of just staring at that. So there's very little talk. In any kind of, semi-expensive or expensive place, people don't really talk. They talk in kind of artificial ways. They don't really talk as they would in a diner, just waiting for their hamburger or whatever it is, and just being open and talk about just about all sorts of things about life. So this story takes place in a diner. It's called Peas and Carrots. So you get 2 vegetables, the waiter says. So I order peas and carrots and corn. That's 3 vegetables, sir, the waiter says. Oh, no, I say, it's peas and carrots and corn. Yes, he says, peas, carrots, corn, that's 3. No, I say. That's peas and carrots, that's 1, and then there's corn, that's 2. She keeps announcing the dishes like, here comes the salad. I don't know, it's all behind me. She can see what I can't see. Here comes the bread, here comes the appetizer. All I can see are her eyes. How they really light up every time something comes in from the kitchen. A secret place that keeps our relationship alive. One time she is wrong. She announces the main dish. I trust her. I don't even turn around. Here come the filet flounders, she announces. And suddenly the waiter makes a sharp turn and serves it to another table. This happens more than once. I'm so sorry, she says. I really thought he was coming this way. So unfair, to you, to us. It happens, I tell her. They're probably backed up with flounders, I say. Yes, she says, but now you'll never trust me again. Would you like me to say something, I ask her. Oh, no, she says, you've done enough. I like the way you stood your ground about the peas and the carrots, I say. Yes, she says, the peas and carrots. The peas and carrots, I say. Yes, the peas and carrots, she says. You'll never get anywhere if you order them that way, I say. She is worried the whole time the food doesn't come about the fillets of flounder. I'm worried about the flounder, she says. What are you really worried about, I ask. The bones, she says. We eat our salads very quietly, except for the crunching of the croutons, of course. You can't help that. I could tell the first couple of times after she crunches her croutons, she begins swallowing them whole. I don't think I know her well enough to stop her, to tell her how I don't mind the sound of croutons crunching. It's just natural, I tell her. Then I say, the croutons are very good, aren't they? Or something like that. And she says, would you like the rest of mine? Do you like them, I ask. They give me hives, she says. No thanks, I say. And then I can't get the hives out of my head, so I stop eating them altogether. People are eating flounders all around us. No one seems to be complaining about bones. We still haven't gotten ours, and I'm about to say something when suddenly she says, here it comes, our flounders. And she is right this time, and her eyes light up again, and I can see little flounders swimming in them, and I feel happy for the first time all day, for her even more than for the flounders. I want to tell her, except I still feel I don't know her well enough, so I say, that's wonderful for both of us. Yes, for both of us, she agrees. Our flounders have bones. We eat cautiously, mindfully, with no joy at all, until I feel this irritating sensation in my throat, the way an oyster must feel the moment it's invaded. Later, after a rather prolonged discussion with the manager, we send back our flounders and have meatloaf with mashed potatoes instead. However, we keep our choice of 2 vegetables. This is what I really wanted in the first place, she says, quite innocently forgetting or ignoring the fact that it was I who talked her into getting the flounder in the first place. Me too, I say. We should celebrate, she says. Yes, of course, I say, but what? We can think of something, I'm sure, she says. How about having dinner together? Yes, she says, together. Or we could something, I say. Something, she says, like love at first sight, or sending back the flounder, or something. So we order meatloaf, and when our flounder plates are taken away, we have mixed feelings. Maybe we could have managed, she says. You know, you can always eat around the bones. I don't really think we know each other well enough yet to be tossing our little bones around, but that doesn't seem to bother her. Either she is completely oblivious to the complexities of a new relationship, or else she doesn't really care and is willing to throw all caution to the wind. Either one is fine with me. There is silence between us for a long time. Something is wrong. She has a washed-up look, like she has been drowning, gasping for breath, and suddenly, miraculously, though unwillingly perhaps, pulled to safety. Look, I tell her, just imagine if we lived in a giant fish tank, how different things would be. What do you mean, she asks. Well, for instance, we wouldn't be eating flounder. We might very well be the flounder, and something else, some other creature we have yet to imagine, would be eating us. Yes, she says, I feel better already. You have quite an imagination, she says adoringly. Maybe so, I say, but considering what's been going on around here lately, it's not that big a stretch. Regardless, she says, I am not going to say another word about it. And she doesn't. Silence, too much silence. Any dating manual will tell you there's been too much silence, especially following a flurry of words. Suddenly we have stopped talking altogether. Our relationship, you might say, seems to be floundering. Every so often, the people at the table next to us explode in laughter, and after one such explosion, she suddenly says, maybe that could be us one day. Would you like some coffee, I ask her. Yes, she says, I would. Then 2 EMS workers pass by us with a gurney. On the way out, a body is strapped to it, its face covered. Must have choked on a bone, she says. Old people can't swallow well, I say. Bones are the bane of old age. And when something gets stuck in their throat, they tend to panic, she says. Do you blame them, I ask? It's not just old people either, she says in a moment of panic. It could happen to any one of us. Do you realize that? Of course, I reassure her. The coffee comes, it's cold. They have taken away the carrots. I can swear they swore revenge. It had to be revenge. We ordered coffee, not iced coffee, and then the coffee arrives cold, she laughs. We have this in common. Conspiracy theories inspired and created by food. After that, we start throwing all these different food conspiracies at each other, like the great baby legume conspiracy of 1984 in Park Slope, Brooklyn. We are taken on a pastry tour. They're in front with the lobsters. There's nothing good about that. In one tank are the lobsters, in the other tank right next to it, so that it appears the lobsters are staring right at them, are the pastries. How could that ever be all right, I ask myself, but I don't ask her. The check comes. We never asked for it. It just comes. Make sure you don't charge us for the flounder, she says, much like someone you've been with for years might say. Yes, of course, but I don't look. Too many complications. I look at the total. If it seems reasonable enough, then how often does the bill in one of these places seem reasonable? She looks at me. I look at her. We look at each other, our bodies, our minds, our dreams, our goals, separated only by this flimsy, worthless piece of paper, our bill. It has come between us, you might say. More importantly, she says, make sure they don't charge you for both the peas and the carrots. This is what I mean. Now I have to look. I mean, what choice do I have? It's no longer a matter of vegetables, but a matter of pride, of trust. The Bones incident is best forgotten. You don't want that lingering, some festering memory, hovering really like some invisible miasmic 14th century plague over a brand new 21st century Upper West Side of Manhattan relationship. But the peas and carrots episode is what will determine our survival. How she will look at me, how I will look at myself, how we look at each other, not just now, but forever. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Annie Finch, our poetry faculty for the MFA.
A blessing on the poets. Patient earth diggers, impatient fire makers, hungry word takers and roving sound lovers, sharers and savers, musers and achers. You who are open to hide or uncover, time keepers, time haters, wake sleepers, sleep wakers. May language's language, the silence that moves under each word, move you over and over, turning you, wondering, back to surprise. At 12, a heartbeat, thick as rain that finds no root. A weight on shoulders gripped and forced to spin. A horde of burning rawness dropped like fruit. A thick, long staircase blighted at the root. A kiss as rough as love could not twist in. A heartbeat thick as rain that finds no root. A taste, cigars, lost in my new tongue's root. A harsh hand, lost and living in my new skin. A horde of burning rawness dropped like fruit, thin moments, thick with anger, smeared like fruit on tongue, seared into mine, foreign and kin. A heartbeat, thick as rain, that finds no root with mother loss, with orphan come to root, with broken body, one me broken in. A horde of burning rawness dropped. This fruit, this pomegranate in a basement, fruit as quick and ready as seeds might have been. A horde of burning rawness dropped like fruit of generation, ancestor, found fruit, lost bodies, decades root, root sin, a heartbeat, thick as rain that finds no root. a horde of burning, rawness dropped like fruit. Moon for our daughters. Moon that is linking our daughters' choices and still more beginnings, threaded alive with our shadows. These are our bodies' own voices, powers of each of our bodies threading, unbroken, begetting flowers from each of our bodies. These are our spiraling borders, spiraling on our beginnings, chaining through shadows to daughters, moving beyond our beginnings, moon of our daughters and mothers. The naming for the 9/11 memorial at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Lopez, Juergens, Lazowski, O'Connor, Lomax, shoes and spirals, dust and the falling flowers, Diaz, Dingle, Galetti, Di Pasquale, Katsimatidis. Wounds widen the remembering earth, closed eyes see beyond the flames, grief opens hands to feel the wind, heart beats like ocean and hears the names. Di Stefano, Eisenberg, Chung, Green, Dolan. Women running suddenly in their high heels. Penny, York, Duarte, Alferez, Sliwak, Yaman Madala. Closed eyes see beyond the flames. Grief opens hands to feel the wind. Heart beats like ocean and hears the names. Wounds widen the remembering earth. Weinstein, Villanueva, West, Sadake, spirals dust and spiraling dust and hours. Bowman, Burns, Kawauchi, Buchanan, Riley, Reese, Ognebene. Grief opens hands to feel the wind. Heart beats like ocean and hears the names. Wounds widen the remembering earth. Closed eyes see beyond the flames. Kushitane, Olzhofer, Wang, Ferrugio, breathed in, only in and beyond the naming. Inglaterra, Seamus, Ling Tiasem, Colin Dorado. Heart beats like ocean and hears the names. Wounds widen the remembering earth. Closed eyes see beyond the flames. Grief opens hands to feel the wind. Sanchez, Talbot, Afflioto, Siskopoulos, every question with a long sob of naming. Tarantina's, Empoatical, Thorpo, Ku, Stergiopoulos, Zion, Zinzi, Song, Shahid Santiago, Ortiz, Pabon, O'Neill, Newton, Carter, Miller, Mohammed, Zachary, Campbell, Deming, DeFranco, Chowdhury, Blackwell, Zucker, McDowell, Goldstein, Basmajian. Wounds widen the remembering earth. Closed eyes see beyond the flames. Grief opens hands to feel the wind. Heart beats like ocean and hears the names. Earth Day. All we want is to find the love in the faces of the people we love. All we need is to find the dark in the nighttime sky, to lie down to sleep in the darkness where stars and moon keep vigil in the silence of the sleeping earth. All we require is to wake to sunlight in the morning, to simple sky, to breathe aloud as the sky is breathing, to drink the water of the earth. All we need is to touch the planet and find it clean where we were born, where our ancestors breathed and planted, where we live with the plants and birds. All we need is to live with the memory of a future we want to imagine. All we want is to find the love in the face of the planet we love. Paravalentine. A paradel and a valentine for Glenn. Come to me with your warning sounds of the tender seas. Come to me with your warning sounds of the tender seas. Move me the way the sea's warm sea will spend me. Move me the way the sea's warm sea will spend me. Move your sea warm, come to me. Will with me. Spend tender sounds, warning me of the way of the seas, the seas. Tongues sharp as two wind-whipped trees will question. Tongues sharp as two wind-whipped trees will question. Skin or nerve waiting, and heart will answer. Skin or nerve waiting, and heart will answer. Question will answer. Two tongues, and or will. Heart sharp as nerve trees waiting. Skin whipped wind. Brim your simple hand over where the skin is. Brim your simple hand over where the skin is. Wish again whenever hair and breath come closer. Wish again whenever hair and breath come closer, closer again whenever. Brim where your skin is. Hair, wish, and breath over the simple hand. Come. Spend come warning me. Whenever simple sounds will. Move your question. Answer your heart-sharp, tender, sea-warm will with me. Way of the seas, where skinned-whipped nerve trees wind over waiting tongues, brim closer to me again. The skin as wish, and two of the breath, hand and hair, or come, is. Summer solstice chant. The sun, rich and open, stretches and blooms on the fire of our work. In the center of the new flowers, a darker wing of fire points you like a flower. Point your fire like a flower. Point your fire like a flower. Point your fire. Point your fire, fire, fire. Point your fire like a flower. Point your fire like a flower. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Annie. And let's give a round of applause for all the faculty that came out tonight. This is from a detective novel I started working on and abandoned about 6 months ago. Detective Dom Fausto would forever associate the body of Ned White with Captain Crunch. Ned didn't wear a blue Napoleon hat or physically resembled the old mustached cereal box skipper, far from it. Ned was a young black male found with a fatal gunshot wound in the front of the Walt Whitman housing projects in the 8-8. Athletic type that somehow maintained a lady killer smile in death, maybe his last thought was a good one, at least a funny one. Fausto had the cereal on the mind because the inside of his mouth still bore the painful lacerations from eating Captain Crunch before the milk had soaked and softened the unforgiving outer shell. Damn things were hard as diamonds. Hurt so bad he had to stop chewing, open his mouth with the offending cereal still rock-like on his tongue, dribbled in some milk and swished it around before he summoned the courage to chew again. He was reading about the captain when he got the call. He had been gazing emptily into the cereal box, and some interesting tidbits about Horatio Magellan Crunch caught his attention. 1, his name is Horatio Magellan Crunch. 2, his ship is called the SS Guppy. 3, he only has 3 stripes. According to Fausto's offhand knowledge of naval rank, 3 stripes made him Commander Horatio Magellan Crunch. Was that right? Could the captain not even be a captain? Was Nabisco complicit in lying to millions of children? Like most of people unsure about a nascent, seemingly original observation at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Fausto submitted his evidentiary findings before Google. Turned out he was correct. 4 stripes meant captain and 3 stripes meant commander. The captain was guilty of rank inflation. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Daily News had already closed the case. Fausto thought, not for the first time, for the next whodunit he caught, he should just Google the fucking thing. Google then, seemingly without irony, brought him to some stolen valor videos, YouTube vids that military servicemen make when they call bogus on civilians pretending they're served in the armed forces. Fausto fell into the quicksand, cell cam footage of armed service veterans cross-examining hapless buffoons in fugazi military uniforms. When the answers didn't add up, as they never did, the shot would linger on the liar exposed. They almost never backed down. Like a suspect in the box dead to rights, they stuck to their disproven story and mumbled incoherently and could not believe the unreality of what was happening. Like their whole life, the world had lied to them and not the other way around. Fausto was wondering how Horatio Magellan Crunch would fare in a stolen valor video when he got the call. He padded quietly into the bedroom and gently massaged his wife's sleeping foot until she stirred. "Hey, babe, I gotta run." Mary smacked her lips, her recently dyed hair spidery across the pillows. She propped herself up on one arm to begin the ritual. "Did you eat?" she asked. "I ate something." Food was fundamental to their marriage. It communicated better than language and bonded stronger than sex. Still, Fausto didn't have the heart to tell her that he'd resorted to eating Captain Crunch when her Sunday sauce was in the fridge. Reheating was beyond him. He was all elbows in the kitchen. He didn't want to trouble her. "Good," she said. "I'll prepare something for when. I'll call you and let you know, okay?" If Don Fausto was speaking to anyone else, that sentence would be a brush-off. To Mary, it was an oath. He kissed her forehead and went back to sleep. She would almost certainly not remember the interaction in the morning. It too closely resembled 100 other run rituals to be memorable. Yet if Dom had made the one without waking her first, she would be in panic by sunrise. Not 20 minutes later, he was at the Walt Whitman housing projects, crouched over the dead body of Ned White, mouth still stinging from his encounter with the fraudulent captain. Brooklyn homicide, our day starts when your day ends. Detective Fausto was the tallest cop in the squad infamous for the imposing size of its detectives. Brooklyn North was all 6 feet and up, except for Detective Second Grade Georgia St. Croix, whose spear-bald black head hovered around the shoulders of her teammates. Fausto wore Italian suits selected by his wife. Her impeccable taste superseded Fausto's indifference to style and misled the world into thinking that he knew what to wear and how to wear it. He had a long face and dark hooded eyes with eyebrows like wolf tails. He so remembered Abe Vigoda's character Sal Tessio in The Godfather that from time to time, squad detectives would pull him aside in a solemn confidence and ask, "Can you get me off the hook for old time's sake?" Always good for a smile. As for the cast of The Godfather went, in physical bearing, Fausto resembled the titular Don more than anyone else. His resting expression was one of calm omniscience and masculine reassurance, his shoulders indomitable as mountains, hands gentle as kittens, the face of a sublime confessor. The Catholic blood ran deep. Fausto actually believed in confessing, purifying the soul, otherwise he couldn't have done the job. For all his blue cunning, he was a creature innately opposed to deception. The squad was full of master liars, devils, and Iagos. They set the interview box with all manner of bear traps and snares of emotional manipulation. Murder was an act of self-destruction, and the box was a place where detectives further nurtured the fuck-all masochism of suspects. Gave them the hammer to slam that last nail into their own coffin. Was it trickery? Maybe. Fausto's mentor, Detective Sergeant First Grade Carl McGregor, was like an imp out of an Irish fairy tale that promised rainbows and pots of gold but took your soul in the bargain. Was it for the greater good? Probably. A suspect reckless enough to sign away future and freedom was dangerous enough to kill again or kill indiscriminate. Once you jump off the give-a-fuck bus, you're gone for good. No one is more homicidal than the suicidal. Some detectives met mopes head-on like a breaching ram. Georgia St. Croix mommy bludgeoned suspects backwards through the stages of development into tattletelling, runny-nosed toddlers. You never knew what would work, so you tried and tried, hoping the stars and conscience and psyche and pressure would align, until you found a technique that fit your character. Fausto made the soul bond with suspects and witnesses, bond into bondage. He'd take you by the hand, hold your elbow, stay there until you accepted his touch, and he was less a detective and more of an armchair, hooded eyes level with yours, his intimidating size dissolved into a big and protective papa bear that you could stretch into, collapse into, sink into. You know your rights. Technically a question, but sounded like a statement. Wait until the nod, the consent, a massive exhale. Now tell me what happened. Walk out of the box, both of them look like they saved somebody.